Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on whatever time you're joining me. First of all, welcome to the journey. It's so good to have you with me this morning. And, today we are going to be getting into a very serious, sensitive, and sometimes conflicting. We're sometimes conflicted about the subject of forgiveness. Forgiveness. And I think that there are a lot of misconceptions out there about forgiveness. There are a lot of beliefs, things we have been taught about forgiveness that can leave us feeling some kind of way. So today I want to address that. Hi, Alex. Hi, Mr. Loris. So good to have you with us. For those people who will be joining us via rebroadcast, thank you so much for joining me. For those who don't know me, I'm Gwendolyn Burton, and I am a person who is on a journey, and I like to say of self-discovery, of becoming myself, my authentic self. And so that's what I'm sharing with you, things that lessons and things that I have learned and gleaned on this journey. I encourage you to go back and watch some of the previous, all of the previous broadcasts, and just get a little bit more information about who I am and what I'm doing. But because today is such our topic is so deep, and so many people struggle with this and have issues with it, or have questions about it. I want to go on and get right into our subject matter today. As always, I encourage a participation. Please type in your comments, type in your questions. If there's something I'm saying that resonates with you, give me a thumbs up. Let me know that you're with me. But let's go on and talk about forgiveness. This week, I have been writing about forgiveness. Whew, yeah. And, I want to kind of preface this by saying, our discussion today, by saying, when we have been hurt, offended, betrayed, abused, whether that be mentally, physically, sexually, spiritually, when someone has crossed that line with us, that boundary, and have hurt us deeply, wounded us deeply, we go to a place of defense. I know I do. I've had things that happen to me in my life where that, when I've been offended or hurt or wounded really deeply, I go to a place of a defense. I take up a defensive posture. And sometimes that defensive posture manifests itself in unforgiveness. Just given my background of childhood sexual abuse, my background of just having to deal with life as you do. You're with your marriage and your children and your faith and all those different elements, your workplace that come together, and things happen. Boundaries are crossed. People do things. People say things to us that wound us and hurt us. And what I have found is that, from my childhood, because I speak from my experience, and my experience is I was raised in the church. I have a Christian background, and I know that some of you who joined me may not share my faith. You have other faith, have another faith, and that's okay. That's okay. But I speak from my perspective, and my background stems from my faith. So I was brought up in the church, as it were, in the church, a Christian. And I was always taught that you always forgive everybody for everything. You forgive everybody all the time for everything. Now, as a child who was going through the things that I was going through, being abused, that was hard for me to reconcile, that I needed to forgive those people who were hurting me, who were doing these things to me that I wasn't telling anybody about. That is the one area in my life where I have struggled the most with coming to grips with this forgiveness factor. So as I was writing this week, I shared a little bit more about that, and I shared some of the things that I have learned. Because sometimes we're taught things and we're told things, but we're not given the context in which we should apply some of these principles. We're left hanging. We're left out there feeling alone, feeling abandoned, and sometimes feeling violated and betrayed and rejected all over again. So our discussion today, and I believe, I'm not sure, but we may have to take this over into next week as well, because I know a lot of people struggle with this. But so for me, given my background and given just life experiences and the things that will happen to you and the people that will hurt you and the things and the situations that we have to walk through, I had an issue. I had a problem. I had a struggle. I've struggled with the principle of forgiving everybody, every time, for any and everything. But what I learned as I continued on my journey, and I went deeper into this concept, this principle of forgiveness, is that in order for me to live my fullest life, in order for me to prosper, in order for me to have peace, in order for me to have joy, in order for me to be my authentic self, forgiveness was something I had to give to myself. Because you see, I saw forgiveness at one time as a weakness, and so many people see it that way. Because when we've been hurt, when we've been violated, when we've been betrayed, when we've been wounded, when we ourselves have made mistakes, unforgiveness, or the emotions that are associated with unforgiveness, because a lot of times we don't even know we're walking in unforgiveness. We just know we have certain emotions present when we deal with a certain person, where we're in certain situations or things are triggered. We just know we have these emotions that surface: bitterness and anger and guilt and embarrassment and shame, all kinds of other emotions. You know what your emotions are. You know the emotions that you deal with when you're around certain people who've hurt you, people who've lied on you, lied to you, betrayed you, abused you. You know what those emotions are that you struggle with, that surface. Hi, Geraldine. It's so good to see you. So when those emotions come up, those are an indicator, or could be an indicator, that we're walking in unforgiveness. But I found that I was still walking or dealing with unforgiveness because when we've been put in situations where we've lost all control over that situation. Let's say we had a divorce, your spouse left or you left your spouse. You may have wanted to stay in that situation, or he or she may have wanted to stay, but for some reason it didn't work out. You could not reconcile and you had no control over it. They're gone, you're going on with your life. Situations of abuse where you had no control over what people were doing to you. Sometimes the emotions that we feel, the emotions that are that present themselves, we may not necessarily associate with unforgiveness. So all the emotions that I have felt about certain situations, about offenses in my past, those were the emotions. Those emotions gave me a sense of power, because that was the only thing that I had to hold on to validate that I was hurt, to validate that I was abused, to validate that I have a right to feel this way. Those emotions, that was my sense of power over the situation, because ultimately I had no power. But those emotions gave me a sense of power. Does that make sense to you? Does that resonate? Does that make sense to anybody? That we hold on to those emotions because it's the only sense of power, of control that we have. It's the only thing, or one of the few things that we have for ourselves to validate that this thing happened to me and it was wrong. So I'm going to hold on to this as a reminder that, yeah, this happened and I have a right. We feel justified sometimes in our unforgiveness. I know I did. I felt justified. I have a right to feel this way. What they did to me was wrong. I was the person hurt in this situation. I was the person betrayed in this situation. My trust was betrayed. I was the person who was wounded. So I have a right to feel this way. Yeah. But even though we have a right to feel this way, even though our pain, our bitterness, our anger, our wounds, although they may be justified, it's still unforgiveness. And as I was writing this week, I really I opened that thing up because, like I was saying when we started, we've been taught that, yeah, you forgive everybody every time for everything. They abused us. They violated us. They wounded us. And so we forgive them. We're supposed to just forgive them. And we think, or we've been taught that by simply saying, I forgive you, those three words, by simply saying those words, I forgive you, that forgiveness has taken place. That's not right. That's incorrect. That is a false teaching. That is a false belief. Simply telling a person, I forgive you, sometimes isn't enough. When you have been wounded so deeply that wound is as if it's printed in your DNA, it's embedded in your DNA, that you wonder, will I ever get over this? This person has wounded me for life. And all I have to say is, I forgive you, and that's it? No, that's not it. There are some things, certainly there are things, some things that are easier to forgive than others. But I think so many times we want to put things in a box. We've been taught that if you do this 1, 2, 3, do these 3 steps, and things are going to be okay. You do you follow this, you go 1, 2, 3, and everything's going to be okay. That's not right. That's why I deal with the real issues of life, the real struggle, because I've done the 1, 2, 3 and still had my heart, still carried unforgiveness in my heart. So I've learned that forgiveness is a process. Because there are going to be things in life that although even when you forgive a person, there are going to be things that trigger you, things that you deal with that where you may have to forgive over and over and over again. You have to remind yourself, I've forgiven that person. I've forgiven that situation. But forgiveness is a process. I had to look for me on my journey, and it's a continuous journey. It's a continuous process that I'm in, that process of forgiveness. I have to go inside myself, and I have to go and examine my heart. I have to confront my own self and say, okay, what is this I'm feeling? What is this I'm dealing with? And sometimes, but you know what, I'm going to kind of go back and forth today, because this subject is just so rich and so full. Because sometimes, we hear things, we hear cliches, and they sound good, and oh yeah, it's got that rhythm, and it's something you can take and use as an affirmation, certainly. But there are also things that give a false message. Things like forgive and forget. Forgive and forget. When a person has hurt you that deeply, you cannot forget. I will never, ever forget the things I went through as a little girl. So you're telling me that when I forgive a person, that I'm supposed to forget about what happened? I'm supposed to forget the violation? I'm supposed to forget the pain, the harm that was done? We have to rethink this thing. We have to re-examine the things that we've been taught and the things that we're teaching. To tell a person to forgive and forget is dangerous. We have our memories for a reason. God gave us memory. And when we have been hurt and violated, to ask me to forget that is asking me to do the impossible. Because if I don't remember, which is impossible to not remember these things. Come on, let's be real. Let's be real. Let's deal with the real truth of the matter. There's no way that some of the things that we've gone through, although we have chosen, forgiveness is a choice, to forgive the violator, there's no way that we can forget. We don't have to let that thing control us or let that be our primary focus in life, but we'll never forget it. We don't forget it. And some of the reasons that we should not forget things and that we should not teach others to forget that is because when we're reminded of some of the abuses and harms, offenses that we've encountered, they can serve as a warning sign. When someone is about to cross that line with you again, with me again, when something in the environment or in the situation or in a relationship is not quite right, and you get that intuition, you get that memory, you get that warning sign, that light starts flashing, remember what happened then? That is helpful. That's helpful. We need that. We don't have to allow a person to continue or allow people or allow environments or situations to continue to hurt or harm us. So to say that I've not forgiven a person because I haven't I have not forgiven someone if I remember, or periodically it comes up in my mind what happened, what they did to me. To say that just because that happens, I have not forgiven a person, that's wrong. That's wrong. And we hold people in bondage. We have people living in condemnation. We have people feeling inferior, feeling less than. We have people hurting, broken, because they remember. They've gone through the process of forgiveness, but because they have that memory, or it comes up, and sometimes we remind ourselves and we have to remind other people of an offense. That's the truth. That's the truth. Just because that happens does not mean that you're not walking in unforgiveness. Sometimes these things serve as a safety measure, a defense mechanism, and it's just plain wisdom. Wisdom. I know those of us who are of the Christian faith, we know in the Bible where, God takes our sins and he puts them in the sea of forgetfulness. That's what God does for us. He's sovereign. But we live in the earth. We live in this dispensation where that's not always possible. And he gave us our memory for a reason. Another thing that I dealt with this week was in writing on forgiveness was we believe, some of us have been taught, we believe that when we forgive a person, that we're condoning what they did to us. We're saying it's all right. I'm okay with that. That has been the biggest thing, issue, struggle that I've had with dealing with offenses from my past. And this kind of goes back to that power element we were talking about earlier, that unforgiveness, the emotions that manifest themselves through unforgiveness, that camouflage themselves, that masquerade as unforgiveness. Those emotions that we hold on to. For me, having gone through the type of trauma that I did as a child, forgiveness was something to me that said, I don't matter. You get to get away with what you did to me. Who cares about me? What about what I'm going through? Yeah, what about me? If I forgive those people, that means that it was okay. It's like me saying they had a right to do it. That's what I used to think. That's what I thought for a long time. Because as a child, that's the only thing I had to equate it to. I did not have the word of God inside of me then like I do now. I did not have the life experiences then that I have now. So forgiving a person does not mean that you're condoning what they did to you, that you're saying it's okay. Forgiving a person, contrarily, quite the contrary, does not let the person off the hook. It does not let that person off the hook for what they did to you or said about you. But forgiveness opens you up for healing. It takes the power that that person has over the situation, the power that that person has over you. Because if we walk in unforgiveness, believe you me, yes, the person that we've not forgiven, they have power over us. They have power to dictate how we're feeling. They have power to dictate how our day goes. They have power to dictate how we live our lives, where we go. Oh yeah, if they're going to be there, I'm not going. In some cases, that's wise. But you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. So we release that to God to work out. We release that to him, to the justice, to pay them back. To pay that other person back because we want to pay them back. We want to pay them back. And sometimes we dress ourselves up because of who we are, and we are and our faith and all these other things. And, we're in this really nice little box and, in this world. And we wear masks. We wear all kinds of masks to satisfy certain people, to satisfy, I'm supposed to be this and I'm supposed to act this way and be this way. We go and we smile and, everything's nice and dandy. I'm good. And inside we are dying. We're hurting. We're not being truthful. And then we beat ourselves up because we wonder, well, that person seems like they were able to forgive and move on, and this person and that, this and that and this and that. And then we start feeling less than and inferior. Well, why can't I? But when we forgive a person, we're taking our power back. And we're trusting God to make things right. Another misconception about unforgiveness is that if I forgive a person, just because I forgive a person, means I have to stay in relationship with them. I have to reconcile with them. I have to stay in contact with them. No, you don't. Some situations are actually dangerous. Some relationships are actually toxic. Some situations will tear you down. Some people, no matter how hard you try, what you do will never, ever change. And we can't change other people. So some people, we just have to, let go of. You can forgive a person even if they do not ask you for forgiveness. A lot of times, let's just be real. People aren't sorry for what they did to us. People aren't sorry about what happened. They think they were right. I was right, they were wrong. And, so, we won't get into the right and wrong issue right now. But some people, you just have to cut loose. Your abuser. No, you don't have to stay in contact with that person just because you've forgiven them. You can cut that. You cut that tie. If that is a toxic relationship, if it's unhealthy relationships. We all have people we're in unhealthy relationship with. It could be at work. It could be in the church. It could be in the community. It could be in your family. It could be in your family, and that's a hard one. That's difficult. That's difficult. But some people, we have to know how close we can get, how far we can allow them into our own sacred space. So yeah, just because you forgive a person doesn't mean you have to stay in contact with them. Okay? So, I'm doing a lot of talking, and I want to hear from you. I want you to interact with me. I know that I hear all the time, Gwen, sometimes we just get so caught up that we want to listen. We're engrossed in what you're saying, and I appreciate that. I certainly do. But I also want to hear from you. And I had some notes, and I'm kind of winging it. Some areas that I really wanted to talk about. So you'll see me here, kind of going through my notes. Another thing, another area that, and we've talked about this a little bit, is that forgiveness isn't for that person. We hear this all the time. We've learned that forgiveness is not for the other person. Forgiveness is for us. Do you know how much energy it takes for us to walk in unforgiveness, to hold that thing over somebody's head, to keep that person locked up in our prison? See, I know what I'm talking about because I've done this. I have held people, offenders, abusers, held in that my own personal prison of unforgiveness for so long that it consumed me to a certain degree. Certainly as a child it did. It consumed me. In the sense that I was so weighted down. I was weighed down by the stress, by the anxiety, by the anger, the bitterness, all of that. That my quality of life was greatly diminished. It was diminished. I couldn't enjoy life to the degree that I do now. Because I was so, those emotions were so raw. They were so raw that I couldn't let go of it. So when I finally was able to go through the process, and it is a process, like I was saying, you can't just jump into it. And I say those 3 words, I forgive you, and then that's it. That's not what it is. But I had to forgive for myself so that I could have a quality of life that I deserve. In a lot of cases, our offenders, our abusers, the perpetrators, they're gone on living their lives, enjoying their lives, and here we are stuck. So we have to certainly work through our own pain, our own grief, our own issues. But when we make the decision to release that person to God for justice, for his justice, for him to do what he desires, what he wants to do in the situation, then we're opening ourselves up to trusting that God's going to make it right, and that we're going to be okay, that we're going to make it through. I see Kendra has a question. How do you truly forgive? I have said I forgive you with my mouth, but as soon as they look at me wrong, I'm extremely angry and bitter again. Absolutely. Kendra, we talked about that just a little earlier in the conversation, that I forgive you. We've been taught wrong. Simply by saying the words I forgive you does not mean that we forgive a person. And we have to look, sometimes we have to forgive the person, And what I've had to do, what I did, was I had to look inside myself, to go deep and say, what do I forgive them for? I had to be very specific. I forgive them for lying on me when they said this, this, and this. I forgive them for, and then we talked about, sometimes you have to forgive a person over and over and over. Because, things trigger us. So it's a process. It's a process. And I think we may want to talk about this again next week and go a little further in it. We'll see. And then so we can get into some more issues like what you're talking about, Kendra, because it's a process. So I don't want to hold you too long. I appreciate your joining me today. Please, for my those who will be watching this via rebroadcast, thank you so much. If you have questions, if you have a question like Kendra, a specific question that you would like for me to address next week or address, on the post, please type that in. Please type that in. Thank you so much. My people are telling me that, it's time for me to, we're winding down. Time to wind down. Listen, I so appreciate you being here. I so appreciate your wanting and needing to work through, to join me on this journey as we work through all these issues, the true issues. Take them outside of the box and just be transparent about what we really deal with in life. Okay, so thank you. I look forward to seeing you next week. Please, if you know someone who could benefit from our conversations, please have them join our page, Moving Forward with Gwendolyn Burton. Please tag them. Please share the video. Share the video, because I believe that there are more people out there like us who are hurting, who have questions, who just want to share life experiences without judgment, without condemnation. I'm here to just be transparent and love you and encourage you and motivate you, inspire you, to let you know that if I can make it, you can make it. And together we can make it. Let's move forward. I will look forward to hearing from you, and have an amazing forward-looking, forward-moving day. Bye for now.